Welcome back to another episode. I have pretty much finished the main part of the body. I have flattened down the primer on the car with 600 grit and just touched up a few places that need some more filler with various things like pinholes, slight defects in the filler itself. So I've done the front part. You can just see there's a few bits here and there that I've gone over. So the first thing I'll do now is just sand them back, and then I can put some more primer on the car and just see how we're looking, and then I can say that's done and ready for the moulding process. Like I said, I am now getting ready for the moulding process, so I want to get the panels as smooth as I can before I go ahead and start waxing the panel and getting the PVA releasing agent on there for making the moulds. So I'm just going over every single piece of the car now with 600 grit and just checking there's any. The main thing I'm looking for are pinholes, which are tiny little holes in the filler that will show up on the panel obviously when you take the mould. With the primer on the car, it's a lot easier to see any defects, and you can kind of get an idea of what the panel will look like once it's taken. So that's a good reason to get primer on early, so you're not kind of guessing and trying to see it through various colours in the filler. I got the Lexan window kit, it arrived the other day, so shortly I will test the fitment on the boot lid, so I can then get the alignment right to make the shroud that will cover the curvature of the rear quarter panels and follow around the back of the boot lid. I'm just going over bits that I previously filled the other day, so I am just going over the bits. I dropped the paper there. Be interesting to see what the car looks like without the tape over the lights. The way the blue tape is around the edge of the light unit, it kind of makes the eye look, it tricks the eye into thinking that the headlights are smaller than they are. So I think it will look much better once the tape comes off and you can see the entire light lens. The proportions of the car should look much better at the front. So in lots of places, as you can see on the edge there, you can see the filler coming through completely through the primer. So before I go ahead to start waxing for the moulds, I can actually take the primer back on and then sand it down for the final finish. Just going to rearrange the camera now. Do that wing there. The lower part where I've touched it up, you can see where I've put filler on, there were loads of tiny little scratch marks from obviously using like 60 grit sandpaper that never actually got sanded out for the final time. So I've just gone over that and filled it again, so it's like perfectly glass smooth now. I'm not sure what you guys think of the flares on the rear and the front wings. I was indecisive of how aggressive to have them, so I kind of went in the middle somewhere. They were a lot bigger, the little lips on the end, but I was thinking about taking them almost back to nothing, but I've found sort of a happy medium where they don't look completely ridiculous, but yeah, they still sort of stand out. I've had a couple of comments about the look of the car, and basically I've been told not to paint it or wrap it matte black because it will look like the Batmobile. So these are the last bits really I'm working on. The aero for the door that aligns up to the aero on the rear quarter. So all this is done by eye. It doesn't actually matter how wide I make those pieces, as in it doesn't have to line up with the width, how far it comes out from the door to meet the rear aero, because I can actually just sand or cut off the fiberglass piece, the final piece, back so it sits into the door enough to align with the rear quarter panels. So sanding these is kind of a little bit tricky because you don't want to break the pieces. They're entirely made up of the plasterboard filler, which are quite vulnerable, if you like. They do crumble quite easily, so I'm kind of doing it all by hand and not putting too much pressure on any of the pieces until I get enough body filler on to kind of create a nice shell that won't crack or break off when I'm sanding it. But with these pieces I'll do exactly the same. So I'll get them to a nice finish and then I'll prime them, I'll flap them, and then there'll be a mould taken exactly the same way as the panels that will come off the car. So for the moulding process I am going to use white epoxy, or sorry, white gel coat it's known as. So the panels that will come off the car will be white, and then I won't have to paint them. I'll just put vinyl wrap or stickers or whatever I want to do on top of that, because the external colour of the car to start with I've decided will be white, so I can just use the colour of the stock gel coat that will come off on the panels. I think that is my 9th tin of car body filler I'm on, so you can do the math, each one is 3 kilos. It's been at least a 3-month process making this ready for taking moulds, and the total build I believe is around 830 hours. So I'll be glad when this part of the build is over, when I can get on with some more mechanical and more fabrication rather than just the bodywork and the sanding. The engine development is coming on quite well, so I'll let you know more on that soon. But yeah, it's being built up at the moment. I've decided not to do any tidying up in the tent or the gazebo until the sanding process is over, because yeah, there's so much filler and dust and stuff on the floor, then I just don't see the point of tidying it all up just to make the same mess again instantly. So now I'm just trying to get a nice finish on the bit you'll see, the obvious part you'll see on the car. I've got the overall dimensions roughly correct, so I can just get the surfaces nice and smooth, and then I can start sanding them back. all the pieces weigh quite a lot, especially the top part of the rear spoiler, which you should see in a moment. It's it's very, very heavy. I'm not sure if you noticed on a previous episode when I was building the top part of the wing, I actually used the side. I cut out the side of a fiberglass kayak to get the curvature, so I could essentially use less filler, and I used it as like a base, a platform to put the filler onto. It was blue, and so I sacrificed an old kayak I had. It leaked and it was no good anyway, but I haven't completely decided on the final shape of these pieces I'm making now. But obviously the rear part, the line the bit I'm working on now, where it joins the door, is obviously, it's just going to be in line with the markings, the angle of the cutout. But the front piece where it kind of disappears, I haven't fully decided on what sort of angle I'm going to finish them at. Just using the very last of the filler now, so there's no waste. Using PVC plastic is a really good idea for using it as a plate, essentially a surface for using filler, because when the filler dries out, you can actually bend the plastic to just crack it off. If you had like a solid piece of ceramic or something, it'd be a lot harder to get the filler back off it. So now I'm working on the rear wing. I'm just sanding down the bits I did on the base of each longitudinal slat on the rear wing. I've just put some filler at the base just to make it easier for pulling moulds off. If you have any really sharp angles, it's going to be harder to pull the mould off at that point, so that's why I've just I ran a bead across the bottom. You can see the light colour of the filler. Well, we're getting very close to the moulding process now. Hope you enjoyed the episode, and I'll see you next time.